Hi, you guys. Welcome to another episode of Ask the Egg Whisperer. So fun to be on tonight. I know you're probably wondering, when is she going to lose that hat? And the answer is Fridays are bad hair days. So every Friday I'm going to be wearing this hat indefinitely. So my husband reached out to me. What am I talking about? He reached out to me as if he's sending in a question to Ask the Egg Whisperer. Yes, that's how my husband and I talk. If we want to have a conversation together, he has to send in a question. He said to me, he's like, now I know why I actually like that hat on you. Because I always, run things by him. I'm like, did I make myself look like a fool tonight? And last night he said, I totally did. He said, I was so weird talking about how we look like brother and sister. So if you missed that show, please watch last night's show. And then you tell me, did I make myself look like a dork and embarrass myself? That's okay. So my husband loves Batman. So if you guys know anything about him, he thinks he's Batman. He has a bat cave and he has a Batmobile. And so he brought, I rarely see him at work because I'm always running in and out of patient appointments. And he actually came by today at some point and he brought in this photo and I have to show it to you. And he said to me, now I know why I like your silly hat, because I remind him of the Joker. So I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not, honey. I love you. Thank you for making me laugh all the freaking time. So anyways, I am ready to now answer your questions and just showing you an inside joke between me and my husband. So the first question comes from Natalie, age 39, in Florida. Natalie says, hi, Dr. Aimee. I am 39 years old and I've been dealing with PCOS after I had my son 4 years ago. Last year, I had my left ovary removed due to torsion of a very large cyst, so I only have my right ovary. In November, we discovered I had another large cyst, and because we were afraid of losing this ovary, we had the cyst removed and saved the ovary. The plan was, after I recovered, I would see a fertility specialist to possibly do IUI ASAP. Since I will be 40 this year, my husband and I want to have another baby. Well, after lots of blood work, it appears my AMH is 0.1, my FSH is 78, and when I had a sonogram done, it shows that I only have 3 follicles. I've not had a period since November, so it's showing I'm in menopause, and my next option is an egg donor. Is there no chance of trying to retrieve any eggs? And though my hubby and I are wanting to go forward with looking into egg donors, what should I prepare myself for? What is the path ahead? So Natalie, what I would say is it's so hard because you've been told that you have this diagnosis of PCOS. And you guys know what I call PCOS. I call it please confirm this ovary syndrome. I have a feeling that maybe the reason why your ovaries, not your ovaries, silly me, why your periods were maybe irregular and your doctors labeled you with PCOS is possibly because not from PCOS, but your periods were irregular because of, having decreased ovarian reserve. So that period irregularity, sometimes people just say, oh, it's PCOS when you're a young woman, and they forget to confirm it and to check an AMH level. It's such an easy hormone to check. As you see, your level was 0.1. So I imagine 4 years ago it's probably maybe 0.3 or 0.4. And now you're seeing that rise in FSH, making it a lot harder to get pregnant with a healthy pregnancy. Have I seen anyone who is almost 40 with an FSH of almost 80 get pregnant with a healthy pregnancy with their own eggs? The answer is, I actually have. I've seen it probably once, and actually I'm lying, twice, and it was in the same person. True story. I had a patient, she came to me. I'll tell you her story, and I know she won't mind me sharing it with you. 40 years old, FSH was like 40, and she's like, Aimee, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I want you to do IVF on me. And I was like, I think, yeah, I mean, you're 40 and your FSH is like, what are the chances? So I got one egg, she had a baby. This is so like legit. Like if this happened anywhere else, I would be like, you're making this up and you're lying. So then she has that baby and she calls me back. She's like, I want another. And I'm like, okay. And we're talking now like 1 or 2 years later. I check her for FSH. It's 80. So I said, look, the only way it's going to happen is if you choose an egg donor. Like, I can't imagine that I could help you. Like, there's just nothing I can do. Like, once their eggs are out of the carton, I can't put more eggs back in. Like, I wish I had some way of doing that. And she calls me one day. She's at the drugstore and she says, you're the first person I'm calling. I haven't had a period for a year and I have a positive pregnancy test. And yes, she had that baby. And we still laugh about it. And I asked her, like, what did you do? Like, how did that happen? She's like, we just had sex every single day. So I'm telling you, in the last 13 years, I've seen it less than 5 times in my career. And so the reality is, could this happen for you? And the answer is, it is possible. Is it something that you should pursue because it will give you a high chance of pregnancy? The answer is no. So my feeling is, if you want a chance and you want to try, you can. If you have follicles, there are some people that have like an FSH of 50. I've seen them because they come here because they have hope in their heart and they want a chance, and I will give them that chance. If I see follicles, and your FSH is high, there's still a chance. However, if there are no follicles and your FSH is high, then I would say obviously it makes sense not to try and retrieve eggs. So my recommendation to you is, if you feel like you want to try once with your own eggs, trying can mean just go through the motions, take medications as if you're going to go through IVF and see what happens. If you're able to grow an egg and you want a chance for pregnancy and you want someone to retrieve it, I think that's fine. However, if you want to give yourself a much higher chance, at least a 65% live birth rate with something that will have a really good chance of working, then I would seek egg donor possibilities as your next chance for a healthy pregnancy. But I just share that with you, not to give you false hope, but to let you know that there are other people just like you who reach out and say, hey, look, I'm in this situation and I still want a chance with my own eggs. What do you think? And I would say, well, I would support you, but at the same time, I would say at this point, using an egg donor probably makes the most sense if that's acceptable to you at this point. And there's no such thing as an egg donor emergency. So tonight, I thought what would be fun is every time I say sparkle, you guys take a shot of tequila. And I'm not going to do it with you while I'm here. This is actually something very special to me, and I've been given permission to share this. And this is a very special bottle of tequila. This bottle of tequila has been inscribed, and you can see that it has the words thank you on it and the name Goldie Rodriguez with the date of birth of February 15th, 2021. Very special. And I want to say thank you to you guys for sending it to me. You know who you are, and I love you very much. And they told me I could talk about it. But I just thought it'd be fun if you guys are at home and every time I say sparkle, see, shot of tequila for everybody. It's Friday night. I think it's okay. This next question is from Anya, age 38, from Sweden. Hi, I just started fertility tests since I've not gotten pregnant after trying for 6 months in a row using ovulation tests. I've never had problems with my period. My BMI is 18. I'm 38. My doctor said my progesterone was good, so I'm ovulating. My TSH is good, however, my AMH is 0.7, and I was told chances of getting pregnant naturally are very slim and that I should consider IVF. Is 0.7 low for 38 years old, or is it expected at my age? I'll be getting an ultrasound and a HSG soon. My husband's sperm seemed very fine and he's 43. Is there a real chance with IVF, or is 0.7 too low for my age? So Anya, you're not a number. You're a healthy, fertile 37-year-old to me. And 0.7 is a very average number at 37. So I would predict if I were to, at 37 or 38, my apologies. I would predict if I were to look at your pyramid, and you guys know what that pyramid looks like. It looks like that. If I were to go through your pyramid, I would say, let's say your AMH is 0.7 without doing an ultrasound. I would say your follicle count is probably around 7. Let's say we got 7 follicles. We might get about 5 mature eggs. Of those 5 mature, 4 would fertilize, and you might end up with maybe 1 to 2 blastocysts. And each blastocyst would have about, I would say, a 25% chance of being genetically normal. So you may end up between 0 to 2 blastocysts from 1 IVF cycle. So I would just be open to the possibility of needing to do more than 1 cycle. But I would say, go for it. I don't see anything here that tells me you shouldn't try. And I feel like if you know what I say, if you aren't taking CoQ10, take it, okay? Don't stop it until you're done having kids. And I would say if you are open to doing IVF, I would definitely do it. Take advantage of the technology, as I think it can help you. You know what I say? It's always nice to have embryos on ice. This next question comes from Becky, age 37, from Sacramento. I'm 37 years old and I've had 4 C-sections. My husband and I thought that we were done, and I had a fimbriectomy during my last C-section 2 years ago. Our blended family situation has changed and we want 1 more baby. Would I even be a candidate for IVF or a tubal reversal? I so appreciate your time and expertise. So this is a great question. So Becky, here's the deal. At the age of 37, if someone really messed up the ends of your tubes and did a fimbriectomy, I say that 10 times. and then say sparkle and take a shot of tequila and see how that goes. But if someone has had a fimbriectomy, I can tell you that the likelihood of being able to repair that tube and have that tube work is close to zero. So my recommendation in a case like yours is you would be a great candidate for IVF. And the reason is that you don't need fallopian tubes, obviously, to get pregnant with IVF. And the likelihood of having your tubes repaired from a surgery that could potentially still result in you needing IVF is really, really low. So I would say check the sperm, check your AMH, and make sure it's worthwhile to go through IVF. You don't want to find out that your hormone levels are really low and you just went through something that, anyways, long story short, get your tushy checked. You already know the T story, but do everything else before you make a final decision. And the other thing that I would say is when someone has had tubal surgery, and we put an embryo, I was going to say, when we put a fallopian tube in your uterus, we're not doing that. One day, though, we'll probably be able to do a fallopian tube transplant. Not right now. But I would say that before you put an embryo in your uterus, you want to talk to your doctor about the risk of having an ectopic pregnancy because you've had fallopian tube surgery. So it's always horrible when someone has an ectopic pregnancy, but it's even worse if you've gone through so much work and then it ends up floating into the fallopian tube. So I've had that happen before. I've had that experience with patients very rarely, and it's always something that you want to prevent if it's possible. And so if you have a risk factor, the one way to prevent it is to completely remove the fallopian tube if it looks like now there might be a hydrosalpinx. So the HSG is one way to find out if you have that hydrosalpinx or not. Okay, this next question comes from Brandy. What am I drinking here? This is what I'm drinking tonight. It's called strong black coffee. Okay. This is Brandy, age 36 from Toronto. Hi, Dr. Aimee. I had my right ovary removed many years ago due to ovarian torsion by a large benign cyst fibroadenoma. Fertility testing was done last June, showed one blocked tube on the side without an ovary, but otherwise my uterus, AMH, E2, FSH normal, and my husband's sperm, including DFI, is great. We decided to do IVF to bank embryos, and we're both 36 years old. Our first freeze-all cycle resulted in 14 eggs, 11 mature, 11 fertilized with ICSI, 10 progressed to day 3, of which 4 made it to a blastocyst on day 5 and 1 on day 6. 3 are good quality and 2 are fair. We decided against PGTA. We want at least 2 kids, so we decided to do another IVF cycle in April. What are the chances of a live birth with the results of my first IVF cycle? Can we rule out egg or sperm quality issues? What testing can we do before our FET to maximize chances of success? Good stuff. I am pretty impressed. And not that I would say, thank goodness you only have one ovary. I have like a hair boner over here. Do you see that? Yes, I just say that. Oh my God, it's so funny. So what I would say is this. Thank goodness. I just thought it, so I'm just going to say it. Thank goodness you just have one ovary, because holy smokes, 14 eggs retrieved in just one ovary. You're very lucky. So you have this left ovary, okay, and you've had surgery before, so you guys know what I'm going to say. Check your tube. Make sure there isn't anything wrong with the remaining tube, that there isn't some sort of issue that could cause, just like I said with Becky's question, an ectopic pregnancy before you transfer. It sounds like you will have plenty of embryos, and I want to knock on something that looks like wood and say to have the number of live births that you want. But my thought process, if you have 4 blasts and 3 are good quality, and you're going to do another cycle, so that means you're going to get 8 blasts at the age of 36, I think you're doing pretty darn awesome. In a case like this, even though we don't know if the embryos are genetically normal or not, I would say just check a chromosome analysis for both of you. So when I have a couple that chooses IVF without PGTA, I recommend doing a chromosome analysis on both of you so that you don't look back and say, ugh, why didn't we do genetic testing for the next cycle? So you still have a chance to consider genetic testing, even if you've frozen your embryos, but usually we like to do it up front. So see how many embryos you get next time, and then talk to your doctor about potentially doing an HSG. And then I would say try and transfer once, and then if it doesn't work, consider implantation testing, like the ERA and the Receptiva DX test. So consider going through a mock cycle first, and then find out more about your uterus, and then transfer the second time. Alternatively, you can do that testing up front. You don't have to just roll the embryos like I say. You can do the testing up front, and then transfer after you get all the information about your personalized embryo transfer window. Okay, let's see here. This next question is from Julia from Austria. Hi, Dr. Aimee. My husband's 34, And we are both trying to get pregnant. I'm 36, and we're both trying to get pregnant since 2016. In 2017, I got pregnant naturally, but miscarried at 11 weeks. In 2019, after my first IVF cycle, 10 eggs, 1 blastocyst, failed transfer, poor egg quality. 2019, second egg collection after supplements and nutrition changes, 15 eggs, 3 blastocysts, second failed fresh transfer. 2020, third failed frozen embryo transfer. 2021, miscarriage. Diagnosis is uterus unicornis, factor V Leiden mutation, ERA test early receptive, hysteroscopy no endometriosis, found genetic testing for us, nothing unusual, very good sperm, IVIG substitution therapy during the second transfer, but allergic, and in the fourth transfer, my doctor said, I will not recommend it at all. What else can we do? Do you have any other recommendations? So what you're saying is that you're a unicorn in a really special way. And I guess I'm going to dedicate this mug to you. So this is everyone else, and this is you, because you have a unicorn uterus. So I think the experience that you've had going through your transfers is very typical for people who have a unicorn uterus. And I think sometimes it's really hard, in some cases, not all, to get pregnant with a healthy pregnancy and stay pregnant when you have a unicorn uterus. I have a little tickle in my throat, so I'm going to just scoot aside and cough here. My apologies. I know that was loud. Let me drink a little bit more coffee. So my recommendation is to talk to your doctor about what are the realistic chances of you being able to have a healthy pregnancy given everything that you've been through. The other thing is that people with a uterine malformation have a higher rate of having endometriosis. So if you're a patient of mine, even though you had a hysteroscopy that showed no endometriosis, I would say, I don't know that that's the right study to tell you for sure. So you might want to consider a laparoscopy instead and see what you find, and then see if there's something that you can do to improve your chances. Maybe take something like Depo-Lupron if there is any sign of endometriosis and still treat it at the time of surgery. But it might make sense to start thinking about other options. And it's so hard to think about other options because obviously you're so motivated. You've been trying since 2017 to carry your own pregnancy. But this would be a good time to collect more eggs, make more embryos, and start thinking about other options like, for example, surrogacy. I'm not giving up on your uterus, but I'm just saying I've had these experiences with my own patients who have a unicorn uterus, and sometimes it might take a different uterus for you to get pregnant with your own eggs. And I hope that I'm not disappointing you in my answer, and I certainly don't want to upset you by what I'm saying, but I'm just saying this because I have care in my heart and concern about you that you might be transferring embryos that may not have a chance in your uterus because of how, your uterus was made. Nothing that you can control about this. Next question comes from Nora. Nora is 34 years old from Colorado. Hi, I'm trying to decide on a natural versus controlled FET cycle. I know my clinic prefers controlled because of logistical convenience, but ultimately they've left it up to me. I prefer fewer drugs, but want to give my embryo the best shot. Pun intended. I love it. What do you typically recommend for a regularly ovulating woman? So Nora, here's the thing. I agree. It is so much easier to plan your transfer around a medicated cycle. That means you're basically taking 3 weeks of medications, 2 weeks of estrogen, 1 week of estrogen overlapping with progesterone until your transfer day. We can put things on a calendar. You can plan your life out. If you're doing a natural cycle, you have to check OPKs, maybe go into the clinic more than once, get your blood checked more than once, and then still not be able to do your transfer. Why? Because some clinics don't transfer 7 days a week. A lot of clinics only transfer Monday through Friday. So you have to find out first, and it sounds like your clinic is open to transferring 7 days a week, but you would never want to be in a situation where people are transferring on the wrong day because the clinic's not open on the day you need to have a transfer accomplished. So it's very important for you to listen to what they're saying, and it sounds like they're saying logistically it's not convenient for them, but they'll do it for you. So if in your gut you're feeling like, I want to go au naturel and I want to avoid those horrible, painful progesterone oil shots, no pun intended, I think that you can definitely do that. And I think natural cycles are going to be just as good as controlled cycles in women who have regular cycles, as long as their clinic is following things and monitoring things very, very closely. For example, they're having you come in, they're looking at your hormone levels. And for me, the way I do it, let me just break it down. I will maybe have you take a fertility pill like Femera to help you ovulate 2 eggs. So you have 2 sources of progesterone being secreted by your ovary and supporting your pregnancy. I'll then have you come in for an early ovulation test, maybe 1 or 2 days before you normally ovulate. I'll have you even start checking OPK 4 days before that. I'll have you come in for a lining check and we'll do blood work. I want to be ahead of ovulation. I want to give you a trigger shot and then have you come in for your transfer about 7 days later. If for some reason you detect a positive OPK, I would feel very nervous that I'm not timing things absolutely perfectly. But I know some people will time their frozen embryo transfers in a natural cycle 6 days after a positive OPK or 7 days after a trigger. Everyone's a little bit different about their style. So talk to your doctor first about their style. This next question comes from Not Fertile Myrtle, age 36 in California. Cute name. Hi, Dr. Aimee. I've gone through 2 rounds of IVF. My first round yielded 2 day 5 blastocysts, 1 euploid graded B-, and a segmental mosaic graded B. My second round, a few months later, resulted in 3 blastocysts, day 5A-, day 5B, and day 6B. All 3 were euploid. We feel so incredibly fortunate. So now I have 4 euploid embryos, 1 segmental mosaic, and I'm gearing up for my first FET. How do you generally pick which embryo to transfer? We've chosen not to find out the sex of each one just yet. Do we go with the oldest euploid one, or would you recommend the highest quality from the second batch first? Is there much of a difference between these? We would love to have more than 1 child in time, so I wonder whether it would be confusing to pick a younger one first and have to explain that later. Let me tell you, I love your question because I see stuff like this on the news where people are like, twins born 3 years apart. And I'm just like, huh? They're not twins. But I get it. They came from the same batch of eggs. But I love your question. I don't think it's going to be confusing to pick a younger one first and have to explain that later. I mean, it's a cute trick. Like, I've actually done that before. We played this trick on my daughter, and it's really mean. And we told her that she was younger than her sister, but she's really older. It lasted about 5 seconds because then I didn't have in my heart to tell her that we were serious. So, I mean, it's not going to be confusing for your children to be like, you came out first, but you're actually younger than your younger sibling. But I get your question 100%, and I think it's adorable. And that's like something fun about IVF and a fun way to describe IVF, I guess, to your children, to explain to them why. And I wouldn't do this, be like, you were actually better quality than this one. That's kind of mean. But yes, I would say I would pick the better quality embryo to transfer first to give you the highest chance of pregnancy the first time. I wouldn't pick based on when you did the cycle. I would pick based on the embryo quality. Okay, so next question comes from Priscilla, age 36 from Washington State. Hi, Dr. Aimee. So thankful for you and your knowledge. My history is this. I'm 36 years old. My AMH fluctuated from July 2019, February 2020, February 21 like this. 0.71, 0.81, 0.57, AFC 5 to 6. Before moving to IVF, we did 4 IUIs, 1 in 2017 and 3 in 2019-20. Low sperm first IVF, birth control for 8 weeks, ICSI, Gonal F300, Menopure 150, microdose Lupron 10 units twice a day. Eggs retrieved 4, 1 cut up at the last ultrasound appointment, 2 fertilized, 2 embryos day 3. That gave us an ectopic pregnancy. Second IVF attempt, 2 milligrams twice a day of oral estrase, and then added 2 milligrams vaginal estrase twice a day. Added Provera for 7 days, Gonal 450, Menopure 150, gave me 2 leading follicles and 2 behind. Canceled and did an IUI, and it wasn't successful. I'm advocating and wanting to try low-dose stim. Good idea. I'm just trying to get any input, advice, and knowledge. Thank you. I'm on ubiquinol, vitamin C, prenatals, omega-3. I did stop DHEA, and I wanted to hear what you have to say. So my thought process is this. It sounds like we might have more than one thing wrong, right? So we might have an embryo quality issue. I also have a tubal issue, and we have a sperm issue. So what are we doing to address all of them? Number one, you're improving your egg quality by taking all these supplements. What I don't see here is that you've added the steroid HGH. Talk to your doctor about whether they think HGH could be good for you. The second thing I haven't heard or seen is a supplement NAD. So if you're not taking NAD yet, that might be something good for you to take. The brand that I take, and of course I have no relationship to the company because I just don't, is True Niagen. You can go to their website and order that online. I take mine first thing in the morning because if I find that I don't, I sometimes have a hard time sleeping. So I want to make sure that you don't have that problem too. The other thing that would be great to do is see why your husband's sperm count is low and what you can do to make it even better. What can you do to make the sperm sparkle? I know, I'm so annoying when I say that, and that's okay. It's okay, because then it reminds you to remember, what can I do to make the sperm sparkle? Because that's kind of an annoying thing to hear. So then you're going to go and do those things. Taking supplements, making sure he's sleeping well at night. I mean, just both of you do all the lifestyle medicine stuff that I always talk about. So make sure he's taking CoQ10, maybe have him take a supplement like Inception XR through Theralogics, and you can use the PRC code 105401. Actually, no. Use the one, all caps Tushy, TUSHY. That's an easy one to remember than my office address. And then the other thing to consider doing, if you haven't already, is maybe see if your doctor could add a little something in the IVF lab. A lot of labs in Washington State already do that. There are labs that already add Zyma and or Pixie to the egg retrieval process to pick the very best sperm to inject into the egg. So when you're doing ICSI, you want to make sure that they're not just picking out the best looking sperm under the microscope. See if the addition of this might be something that they want to do for you. And one way to know if you should really do it or not is that test, the DNA fragmentation test, that's part of the Balls method, and it's the big B of the Balls method. I had to think about that for a second. So the B of Balls is background genetics, and background genetics for the sperm would be looking at sperm DNA fragmentation as an example. So last but not least, in a case like yours, Priscilla, I would move forward with what I call the Aimee protocol. What is the Aimee protocol? The Aimee protocol is where you take Femera combined with Gonal F and or Menopure, and then use that together as an approach to grow your cohort of eggs. So that is a mini IVF protocol, and I think that's something that you can talk to your doctor about and see what they say. I would avoid suppression with birth control pills and estrace and see if they would consider a mini IVF type protocol in your scenario. And I still feel like there's a chance that you can have a healthy embryo based on the fact that we know you've made a blastocyst. Even though it landed in your fallopian tube, clearly you make an embryo that could be viable. And I think at your young age, at 36, I would keep trying and advocate for yourself and talk to your doctor about different options, just like you're doing with me. This next question comes from Sarah, age 35, from Dubai. Here we go. We have 4 parts. Let's break it down. Demographics first. No prior pregnancies or miscarriages, 35 years old. Embryos, 5. 4 boys and 1 girl. PGTA tested normal from the first round of IVF. 3 abnormal female embryos. Monosomy 10, 20, trisomy 12. Questions are this. If our first transfer does not work, would you transfer an aneuploid girl before doing another round of retrieval for a euploid girl? And the answer is no. Yes. No to transferring an aneuploid girl. Keep it though. And I would say yes to doing another cycle for a euploid girl. Part 1 of 4. Hi, Dr. Aimee. I recently found your podcast and can't stop listening to the back catalog. Thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge and expertise. My fertility doctor conducted a hysteroscopy and saw 30% scar tissue on the top right-hand side of my uterus. I attached the report. I was not under general anesthesia. It was conducted 5 days after my retrieval. This was under general anesthesia. A removal of the scar tissue was not attempted. Instead, my doctor suggested 3 months of estrogen with no guarantee it would make a difference. Part 2. What would you recommend for someone with my diagnosis? Would you recommend surgery to remove the scar tissue, which was not suggested by my doctor, but I heard your interview with Dr. Jessica Mann that this could be standard procedure? Would you recommend treatment through medication? If so, which? Or would you go ahead with the first FET? What do you usually do with your patients who have 30% scar tissue in such a location? So Sarah, here's what I would do. You need to have the scar tissue removed. We would never leave 30% of the uterus scarred down before we transfer a precious embryo. Doing that could cause implantation failure, miscarriage, preterm labor delivery, placental abnormalities. The placenta can implant abnormally and put you at risk of something called a placenta accreta, or even worse, a percreta. We don't like that. We don't like anything placental being abnormal, if at all possible. And if there's an anatomic issue in the uterus, that could be a risk factor. So I would definitely see someone to have the scar tissue removed. And I think 10 out of 10 fertility doctors here in the US would agree. So advocate for yourself and talk to your doctor and see if you can get a second opinion. Part 3 of 4, mild adenomyosis, not diagnosed from an MRI. However, my doctor saw an ultrasound, but does not consider that it will be an issue. It's not been mentioned on any previous ultrasounds by 7 other gynecologists over 10 years. I have PCOS, AMH is 12, FSH4, LH11, estradiol 36, TSH 1.8, prolactin 22. BMI 18, no endometriosis. Endometrial immune profile was normal. I was told my fallopian tubes were blocked. However, my doctor has reviewed my medical reports and states that they do not indicate that my tubes are blocked. I apologize for such a long message. I understand if it's not possible to clarify all of my queries on your podcast. Well, I'm going to try and do my very best. My main concern is the 30% scar tissue treatment protocol. And I agree. I would be concerned as well. I wouldn't just treat with estrogen. You got to remove the scar tissue, consider a balloon inside the uterus, and then continuing with estrogen, and then adding antibiotics, and then adding progesterone, removing the balloon, and then doing another hysteroscopy perhaps to make sure that the scar tissue is all gone before you transfer your precious embryos. The other thing is, with mild adenomyosis, it is possible that it's gotten worse over time, meaning even though you've seen 7 other gynecologists over the last 10 years, it is possible that the passage of time has caused it now to be obvious on ultrasound. The fact that your fallopian tubes are blocked and there's scar tissue in your uterus, it sounds like they're connected. So I would say do a hysteroscopy, laparoscopy, and if your tubes are indeed blocked, it might make sense to remove them as a source of inflammation that's potentially making your fallopian tube, your cavity have this type of, we'll just call it a situation, especially if there's an endometriosis. Endometriosis can then possibly, affect your uterus in a way that can make transferring less successful for you. Here we go, part 4 of 4. My doctor has given me medications, Cetrotide, Gonapeptyl. He said it's to help the Asherman syndrome, mild adenomyosis, to remove a cyst found during my ultrasound. Would you recommend the same protocol? So again, I would say I do like this protocol for adenomyosis. However, there's no evidence that taking hormones will actually remove scar tissue. I wish somehow you could do that, like that there was some adhesive removal pad that you could somehow swallow, or inject, and then all of a sudden the scar tissue would remove or be gone or go away. That's probably a better word. So I wish that there was something like that, Sarah. I feel for you. I wish that I could put you on a plane, bring you over here, and then we could remove your scar tissue. But I still think that there are really good doctors where you are. So hopefully you can find one that will do the surgery for you. Okay, this next question comes from Tara, age 35 in California. Our egg retrieval is estimated in 3 to 4 days. Should my husband refresh his sperm today so that it's fresh for my retrieval day? And the answer is yes. Have a sparkly sperm day on the egg retrieval day. And the way you do that is to collect or have him, I'm just making myself look like a complete fool right now, so I'll just tell you what I recommend to my patients. At the start of your egg retrieval cycle, have your husband, you don't need to have a husband to go through IVF. You don't even have a man to go through IVF. You can be single and be in a same-sex relationship as well, so I want to qualify that. But if you are married to someone who has sperm that's going to ejaculate on the day of your egg retrieval, I'll tell you what to do. You start ejaculating every 3 days starting at the cycle start. And that is to prep for the big day. The big day for you is egg retrieval day. And if there's any chance that you might be scared or have some issues, make sure to get some sperm backup. We don't like sperm emergencies. We like frozen sperm in cases of having a potential sperm emergency. So the answer is, to answer your question, long story short, yes. Please have them ejaculate 3 to 4 days before the egg retrieval. And what I tell my patients to do is I give them the lead up, meaning I tell you when the trigger shot's going to be, and I ask people to ejaculate the day before the trigger shot. So that's the easiest way to remember when is the last day to ejaculate before an egg retrieval, and that is the day before the trigger shot. See? Easy. This next question comes from Kelly, age 43 from Massachusetts. Hi, Dr. Aimee. I absolutely love your sense of humor. I had a consult with a fertility doctor in Boston. She told me my day 3 labs didn't appear to be day 3 because the progesterone was high, which is indicative. Do you see how fast I said that? Indicative of post-ovulation. What does this mean? I explained. I didn't take a progesterone test that same day. I took the progesterone test 7 days after ovulation. And ovulation was day 18 for me, and it was 4. She said the results of the AMH are good too, but the day 3 labs will need to be redone. FSH was 6.5, estradiol 51. The labs were actually done the morning of day 4 because their office was closed. She told me we should skip right over IUI and right into IVF. The next step is a Clomid challenge test and ultrasound. She was not interested with my cycle charting info, low follicular, BBT temps, OPK, Prove, or OvuSense. I really felt unheard. I don't want to waste any more precious fertility time, and maybe IVF is our best route. But should I get a second opinion, and from where? So Kelly, you are, to me, a healthy, fertile 43-year-old who has good eggs until proven otherwise. We just know it's really hard to find a good egg when you're 43 years old. It just is. But with an AMH of 2, I would say go for it, and I would do that. I would say go right to IVF. I do think it's your best route. You have plenty of time to do other things like IUI. And I would say don't feel that she's pressuring you to do IVF if that's her recommendation. But I do agree. I feel like in the old days, and I'm talking like maybe 15 years ago, people were actually told, oh, you're 43, we don't allow IVF here. But I think most women are now trying for their first baby, second baby at 43, and we have more experience helping people over 43. And I bet your doctor knows that you're one of those 43-year-olds who has a really good chance of pregnancy. So as far as, their style and their way of communicating, I think it's just nice to be able to advocate for yourself, know what questions to ask, but knowing where you're at as far as an IVF lab, where you're at is actually pretty darn good. They have a great lab. So I would say if you can, feel like you can communicate in a way that would make you feel heard, write things down, send it in ahead of time. Don't leave the clinic without your questions being answered. Like those are certain little tricks that I share with people. And I think now with the pandemic, sometimes you have to do more over the phone or email or through telemedicine consults, which I think is just fine. So sometimes you just need more contact with people to get your questions answered rather than being able to get them answered while you're physically there. So be sure to take CoQ10, take NAD, see if they can help you with HGH, see if that's a protocol that they would use for you, and make sure that you've looked carefully at the sperm and don't miss an opportunity to make the sperm sparkle also. See, I said it. Okay, next question comes from Mariam, age 37, from Iran. Hi, Dr. Aimee. What are the main causes of placenta not working properly? I had an emergency C-section due to placental abruption for my son and had a 21-week loss last December. The post-mortem report came back for the baby being genetically normal, placenta being small. Could this be due to scar tissue or other abnormalities in the uterus? Can these be seen on ultrasound or do I need a hysteroscopy? My OB is reluctant to do a hysteroscopy. I feel broken. Thank you for being a light in this infertility darkness. I'm really sorry, Marianne, for all you've gone through. Having a traumatic delivery, I can only imagine how, that leaves you feeling and the memories that you have of that. And then also having a 21-week loss last December, I'm sorry also that you've experienced that as well. Here are my thoughts. Whatever caused the placental abruption is possibly likely linked to the fact that whatever the causes that you had that resulted in the 21-week loss. There's one condition that can cause both of them. There's a few actually, but let me name one of them. Uterine fibroids, uterine adenomyosis, and Asherman syndrome. So it may not be a bad idea to ask your doctor if they think that somehow this is all connected to either one of those diagnoses. If they're not willing to do a hysteroscopy, it's okay right now, but perhaps ask them to consider doing a pelvic MRI. If you have adenomyosis, it may not be a bad idea because of your age of 37 to do IVF to preserve embryos. I would hate for you to have to go through another horrific experience and experience another loss at 21 weeks. I would hate that to happen to you. But I feel like if that did, because of your age, then you would be closer to 38 or 39 when you would be able to get pregnant and try and get pregnant again. So that's why I'm thinking it might make sense to consider doing IVF to preserve embryos and then deal with whatever the cause is that's causing the issue with the abruption and the 21-week loss. So definitely talk to your doctor and see what they think as to whether these could be possible issues. And I would say doing a hysteroscopy makes sense. Doing a laparoscopy possibly makes sense. It sounds like you've done genetic testing, and I would talk to your doctor about these things. And hopefully they will help you feel heard so that you can get the help that you need. And I'll also share that I went into fertility medicine because my mother had not just one, but 2 losses in, between 20 and 25 weeks of pregnancy. And when I was little, that always sat with me, the experiences that she had when I was in middle school, and seeing her go through that made me fired up to do what I do every single day. So I basically dedicated my life to helping women who've had the types of losses that you've had, and being an IVF doctor is one of the ways that we can deal with that. So this next question comes from Nin, age 39, from New Zealand. I've been trying to conceive for over 2 years. Last December, I did my first IUI cycle and fell pregnant. Unfortunately, 1 week later, I miscarried. The NIPT test revealed that there was a trisomy 7. I just turned 39 and I want to know if it's sensible to continue with IUI or shall I move to IVF with PGS? I'm a bit concerned about how age might be a factor for egg quality. So, Nin, it's hard because it's something that happens, and it's just hard because there's nothing really that we can do about it other than lead the healthiest life ever. Like, don't smoke, everything in moderation, like drinking, eat healthy. And at the end of the day, you're either going to have a good egg or you're not. But at 39, the best thing to do is to get your levels checked, take CoQ10, and go see a fertility doctor that's going to believe in your fertility. And hopefully do IVF and be open to the possibility that it might take several cycles to get a healthy embryo. And no matter what you do, it might still be too hard to do that. And you might have to think of other options to be a mom. And I think finding a doctor that's going to be able to carry you through these tough times is really important. And remember to think about your mental health as you're going through all of this. Having the experiences that you've had of getting results that are abnormal, finding out that there was a trisomy, and then now, making a decision about what to do next. I feel like talking to someone about how you're doing in your relationship with your partner, with your loved ones, how's everything going with your sleep and your mood, and making sure that you're taking really good care of yourself along the way. I think is something that's very important to me as people are starting their treatment journey and throughout their journey as well. Okay, this next question comes from Anna, age 37 from Kentucky. Hi, Dr. Aimee. I love your show and you helped inspire me to be proactive with my fertility. Well, I would say that's great and mission accomplished. I'm 37 and my husband and I want 2 to 3 kids, so we're going to do IVF to freeze embryos for the future. Well, I guess you heard the show where I said it's always nice to have embryos on ice. I have a history of PCOS, but of regular 29 to 32 day cycles. My husband has a 2% morphology in his semen analysis, with a count and motility in the lowest range of normal. I did 1 cycle last fall and we retrieved 21 eggs, 19 fertilized with ICSI, and I ended up with 10 blasts. However, only 2 of them ended up being genetically normal. 5 were missing chromosomes and 3 were mosaic. 2 of the embryos were missing chromosomes, also had mosaic changes on other chromosomes. The report said there was no pattern to the abnormalities, and I'm getting ready to do another cycle. Is there anything we should do first? Do you think this is more likely an egg issue or sperm issue? My RE said it's probably just bad luck and expects a better outcome on our next cycle. So, Anna, what I would say is this is actually a great cycle. I mean, the fact that you got 2 normal embryos and 3 mosaic means you almost got 5 embryos in 1 batch of IVF. I wouldn't say that this is an egg issue or a sperm issue either. I would just say this is a great cycle. Your 3 mosaics could very likely be very healthy embryos. So I would say I wouldn't necessarily consider this a bad thing. But if you aren't taking CoQ10, take it. If your doctor thinks that HGH could help you, do it. Make sure the sperm side is also taking CoQ10 and that they're doing all the things that they need to do to make their sperm sparkly. If you have a history of PCOS, make sure you've balanced it. Check all the PCOS labs, especially your testosterone, and make sure you've treated it. And then go for it. Do another cycle. And then I would say start transferring. And I have a really good gut feeling that everything's going to be okay. This next question comes from Sue. Sue is 31 and she's sending us this question from Massachusetts. Hi, Dr. Aimee. Thank you for answering all our questions and providing education about our fertility. I'm 31.7 years old. I love that. Hubby is 32. Yay. I have normal blood work except an AMH drop from 1.8 to 1.08 in 6 months. Different clinic, different lab. Normal HSG hysteroscopy to rule out fibroids, polyps, uterine septum. All negative. Follicle count 10 to 12. Both have done genetic chromosome testing and they're normal. My cycles are 23 to 28 days. I spot 5 to 10 days before a full-blown period, painful period with clots. But the pain is managed with Motrin for 1 to 3 days. My doctor doesn't suggest laparoscopy since my symptoms are not so bad. I wonder if I have endometriosis. So far, we've tried 1 time with meds and 2 IUIs with meds, unsuccessful. History of cysts, but not concerning to the doctor. My doctor suggests IVF with ICSI, Gonal F225 and Menopur 150, priming with oral estrogen. What do you think of this protocol? Would you do anything differently? Thank you so much. Okay, Sue, yes. Here's the thing. It does sound like you have endometriosis and you might also have adenomyosis. I would support your egg quality with this diagnosis by having you take N-acetylcysteine approximately 1,000 milligrams per day. If you were my patient, I would also have you take CoQ10, NAD, and I would also add HGH. The other thing that I would also have you do is, we know your diagnosis. It sounds like you might have endometriosis. And again, your symptoms are telling me that. This is not rocket science. I would also have you take Femara throughout the cycle, so I'm not increasing your risk of making your endometriosis worse by putting you through IVF. I would also potentially avoid doing the estradiol priming, but I don't want to interfere with the protocol because the protocol that your doctor is recommending for you is not so bad. It's actually quite good. I do like the amount of drugs that your doctor is giving you. 225 of gonal with Menopur 150. I think that sounds really good. I would just add Femara throughout the cycle, at least for maybe the first 5 days, to make sure your estrogen exposure is not very high. I would potentially consider doing the Receptiva DX test at the time of the egg retrieval or 7 days later to look to see if there is silent endometriosis. It doesn't sound like it's very silent given the symptoms that you're sharing with me. And then depending on the number of embryos that you have, consider doing a full ERA test with or without the Receptiva test if you didn't do it the first time. And I would consider, if you don't want to do the Receptiva DX test and you don't want to do the ERA test because you have so many beautiful sparkling embryos, consider doing 1 month of Depo-Lupron before you transfer. And if your doctor thinks there could be any adenomyosis, get it treated before you transfer. If you have several embryos, if it's mild, sometimes just putting an embryo in, you'll have really good luck and everything will be a-okay. However, we know from lots of experience over many, many years, like many years, that adenomyosis can decrease implantation rates, increase miscarriage rates, and I don't want that to happen to you. So if your gut feeling is you have endo, it sounds like you probably do. You don't necessarily have to do a laparoscopy, but potentially consider doing or starting medical management for this problem before you transfer. And then if you feel like, I'm trying to see here, no, I think that's it. If you aren't doing PGTA, talk to your doctor about whether that's something that you should consider in your situation. And if you're not going to do it, be sure to check a chromosome analysis for both of you. I didn't see that you've had a chromosome analysis done yet. Okay, this next question comes from Gina. Gina is age 36 from Sacramento. Hello, Dr. Aimee. First, I want to thank you for your advice because I pushed hard to get a Receptiva DX test, even though my doctor said I didn't need it. And I ended up with a positive score of 2.1. She's suggesting Depo-Lupron for 2 months before transfer. She doesn't think I have hydrosalpinx because I had a hysteroscopy February of 2020 and reported normal fallopian tubes, and there was no comment for endometriosis. I had the hysteroscopy because they removed my uterine septum. She suspects that I have mild endometriosis. Also, she suggests continuing on birth control pills during this treatment. What do you think about my treatment? Any additional medications for transfer? I only have 2 normal embryos left. Thank you for all you do for us. Okay, here, Gina, here's the deal. This is the thing. When you take Depo-Lupron, it's going to put a pause on things for 2 months, right? So that's 2 months where you can't do any treatment. And then you're going to transfer. And let's say you do that. And I'm just going to be really negative for about half a second because you guys know that I don't like being negative. I would say then you're looking at, if the transfer doesn't work, you're looking at not being able to do another cycle for maybe 3 or 4 months, right? So here's what I would do in a case like yours. I would say, look, let's sit down and talk about what you want, what is it going to take, and what are you willing to do? What is the implantation rate of 2 of the embryos that you have left? If the implantation rate is 50% or less, I would consider doing another cycle now at your young age of 36. That's what I would do first. Okay, so then let's say you're like, no, she's crazy. I'm not doing another IVF cycle. Forget that. I would say, I'm not crazy. I promise. I'm looking out for you, Gina. Okay, I want you to have at least 2 kids. And so that's why I'm thinking that doing another retrieval might make sense, depending on your embryo quality and the number of kids that you want. And then here's the deal. As far as that protocol with the BCL6 of 2.1, I'll tell you what I would do. I would say yes to definitely checking your fallopian tubes. You are so right to bring that up. The hysteroscopy doesn't tell us your fallopian tubes are open. It just looks at little holes that connect the tubes to the uterine cavity, and then we just look at them and we're like, hello, you're there. But they don't tell us if there's a hydrosalpinx or not. See, the fluid in your fallopian tubes that collects in there cannot be seen from below. You can only see it from above. So you either would do a laparoscopy or a HSG to know for sure. So definitely advocate for yourself and say, before I go on 2 months of Depo-Lupron, please request an HSG for me. Order it, just humor me. I just want to make 1,000% sure that the inflammation isn't coming from my fallopian tubes. The next thing is with your BCL6 of 2.1, I wouldn't necessarily run right to Depo-Lupron. I don't feel really excited about doing that because no one's really thought that you have that bad of endometriosis. It seems like maybe someone's suspecting mild endometriosis, but you might be able to get away with just 1 month of Depo-Lupron and take agestin and Femara daily with N-acetylcysteine. So that's my protocol for someone who has a BCL6 of 2.1. Depo-Lupron for 1 month, agestin daily, NAC about 1,000 milligrams. Be sure to take an extra calcium supplement. And then Femara is 2.5 milligrams, 2 tablets per day throughout the 30-day course of Depo-Lupron. And make sure to read my Depo-Lupron survival guide. That was written by a patient of mine, and I love that I get to share it. And I actually did a cute little show about it. Well, I think it's cute. You might not think it's cute. My apologies if you don't think it's cute. My husband thinks I'm cute. he sent me this picture today. He actually brought it in, and he said that I remind him of the Joker. I don't know if that's very cute, or if I should take that as something that's flattering or a compliment. I'm not so sure. This next question comes from Devin from Alabama. Devin is 37. I've been diagnosed with PCOS. My AMH is 6.6. And as of today, I've completed a fertility workup, which revealed my vitamin D is 7. All my other tests are normal, including my thyroid. My SHG, which stands for sonohistogram, showed no polyps or fibroids, and I was told my uterus looks fine. Would you recommend proceeding with IVF with a low vitamin D? I'm currently taking 50,000 a week, but should I wait to start the process until I get my level up to at least 30? Thank you. So Devin, there actually has been a study done asking this very question. They took people who had a normal embryo and they compared the people who did a transfer with a low vitamin D compared to people with a normal vitamin D and found no difference in pregnancy rate. I don't know. Is it that big of a deal for you to start now before your vitamin D is normal? I would say, I don't think it's a big deal. You're on the vitamin D now. Your vitamin D is going to slowly creep up, but here's my tip for you. My tip is don't stop the vitamin D once your vitamin D is normal. That's a big mistake people make all the time. People are like, oh yeah, my vitamin D was low about 2 years ago. I took it for about 3 months and then I stopped it. I'm like, oh, but your vitamin D is probably low now again. The amount of vitamin D that is in our prenatal is so tiny. It is not enough to maintain a normal vitamin D for someone who has a history of low. See how fast I'm talking? You can tell that I want to go home because I have Chinese food waiting at home and I love Chinese food. I actually love pot stickers. So there's a little set of pot stickers waiting for me on my kitchen counter and they're calling out my name. Aimee, come home. So apologies for talking so fast. So I would say if you are a patient of mine, Devin, at the age of 37, I wouldn't delay your treatment. I would say go for it. Continue your vitamin D. And if you have PCOS, which it sounds like you have told us that you do, make sure you've done all the testing ahead of time. Lower your testosterone, make sure you've checked it, check your hemoglobin A1C, check your cholesterol panel, and do all of that, including your liver function test. Make sure you've ruled out acute fatty liver disease and treated all the stuff medically before you transfer. I'm not too worried about that stuff, except the testosterone and the hemoglobin A1C before you actually start your IVF cycle. Okay, this next question comes from Ashley, who is 37 years old from Tennessee. I'm preparing for my second embryo transfer in the coming months. My first was successful with me giving birth to a child in May of 2020. Since my first was successful, what are the odds that my second one will be as well? Also, I have 3 embryos left and thought about putting 2 in this time around. Would this be careless since neither could possibly take? I would love to be able to use all of them. Background on me, I have factor V, which I treat, and had a slight hematoma, which resolved, but other than that, my pregnancy was easy and healthy. Thank you. Okay, so here's the deal. The fact that you were pregnant with your baby that you gave birth to in May 2020 from this set of embryos means this is a really good batch of embryos. The pregnancy potential of the ones that are left are probably really, really good. However, should you put 2 in? I'm going to say not so fast. My concern about transferring 2 is this. It increases your risk of what? Preterm labor, preterm delivery, preeclampsia, postpartum hemorrhage. And then if any of those things happen, that can cause significant morbidity to you and your babies. If you transfer 2, you might end up with none. If you transfer 2 and miscarry 1, then that miscarriage, especially if it's, let's say, 25 weeks or above, could affect the other one. It would be heartbreaking to have that happen to anyone I know. And I know all my patients out there who are like, well, I'm a twin. Or they'll say things like, well, Aimee, you helped me have twins. And I'm like, I know. But the situations where my patients don't have healthy twins, they stay in my heart. And I know them. I know their stories. I know how old they were. I know what happened. I know how long ago it was. Like, they stay with me forever. And imagine if that happened to you, the same thing would happen with you forever. And you would say, why did I transfer twins? This is actually a true story. I actually have a patient that lives not too far from here, and she wanted twins with her first pregnancy, and I said yes. And she did it. I gave her all, like, I do this thing where we arm wrestle and whoever wins. No, I'm kidding. We don't do any arm wrestling here. I show my patients articles about twins and the risks associated with them and make sure they've read them and they understand what the risks are before I do that. And she said to me, like, Aimee, I kind of wish that I had listened to you. And if you ever had a patient that was just like me, young, healthy, and was like, I really want twins, and this was years ago, can you just, like, have them talk to me? I'll just talk to them about, like, you know, what the experience was like having twins at 26 weeks and being in the NICU for months and months and months and months and months and months, and how that felt. And I can tell you, every single one of my patients who has talked to her has decided not to transfer twins. But the thing is, you see these like really cute pictures on Instagram of twins. It looks really cute. And certainly twins are cute. And like if you're a patient of mine, you have twins, like I think your twins are really cute. Don't get me wrong. But like 90% of the time, everything is great. 10% of the time, it's not so great. And if you're part of the 10% of the time, you're going to regret it. So whenever we have a medical procedure that we perform and there's a 10% rate of complication, we're going to think really long and hard about giving someone a 10% risk of a complication from a procedure that we're doing. I will transfer two. If I transfer one and it doesn't work, and the second time I transfer one, it doesn't work, then the third time I will transfer, or at least talk to a patient about the possibility of transferring two to see what we think about that. So I would say in a case like yours, I would say probably transfer one at a time if it were me. Okay, this next question comes from Jamie, who's 37 in Hawaii. And oh my God, I would love to be in Hawaii right now. That sounds glorious. So I hope you're having a wonderful time living in Hawaii. I'm slightly jealous. And the thing is, like, I would love to live in Hawaii, but I'm like, if I would be at the beach, I'd be like, who wants to get pregnant? Does anyone want to get pregnant over here? Because I'm literally like that person that just cannot not work. And everyone knows that. I'm no fun at any party. I just want to help people get pregnant. And people come up to me and they're like, hi, Aimee, I know you're not working right now, but can I like share my I'm like, oh yeah, no. You just come talk to me and then we'll talk and I'll help you get pregnant. Hi, Dr. Aimee. I just went through my first failed FET. I'm working with both a diminished ovarian reserve, AMH of 0.35, as well as male factor. I'm 37 years old, by the way. My husband and I conceived our first right away at 33. We've been trying for the last 2 years now, starting fertility treatments a year ago. I've gone through 3 failed IUIs, went straight to IVF, 13 eggs retrieved, 9 mature, 6 fertilized. We did not do PGS testing due to the doctor recommendation. 3 embryos were taken out to blast, and only 1 made it in the freezer, and we froze 3 on day 3. I just lost all my day 3 embryos during this failed FET. I'm currently taking Theralogics, Ovavite, and vitamin D. And are there any other supplements you would suggest prior to possibly doing another round of IVF? I'm assuming it's an egg quality thing since all else looked great test-wise and pre-transfer. Just trying to stay hopeful and plan ahead, so any advice is appreciated. Thank you. So Jamie, I think you're right. I mean, I think we have enough data to tell us that it's possibly egg quality driven. We have your age and your AMH of 0.35, and I still think that there's a chance. What keeps me really hopeful about your case is that you had 13 eggs retrieved. You guys all know the trick, right? If your AMH is 0.3, you would expect about 3 eggs from a cycle. The fact that you got 13 eggs is pretty fantastic. So I would say don't give up, and I would say it possibly makes sense to do PGS, but if your doctor doesn't recommend doing testing on embryos, there might be a really good reason. Maybe they're not as confident as and I'm being like totally legit and transparent. And so I feel like if a clinic is saying don't do PGS here, what they're also saying is we're not as confident in our ability to do it in cases like yours. So you have to listen to them. So we don't want them to damage your embryos. We don't want them to do anything that could possibly get in the way of an embryo sticking and growing. And I think that's okay. I think that's okay in a case like yours because we don't think that you need IVF to get pregnant with a healthy pregnancy because you've done it before. Meaning you don't need the genetic testing piece in your case. Neither you or your husband sound like carry a balanced translocation. Neither of you share a common mutation for a variant. So my suggestion is to add NAD. I have a little bottle here, the True Niagen. I feel like they should also put like my photo right here and with me saying, hi, please make your eggs younger. Because I swear there's something about this that works for not everybody, but for a lot of people where I've seen people have, let's say, 8 eggs in one cycle and then 18 eggs in the other. And I'm like, what did you do differently? And they're like, I took the NAD. And I'm like, wow, I got to write that up. Okay. The other thing that I would have you take, it sounds like you're taking CoQ10 already because that's in the Ovavite. You're taking vitamin D already. And I would say maybe have your husband take everything else as well, like the same stuff that you're taking. And then I would say talk to your doctor about maybe, I'm just trying to see here, trying a fresh transfer. So I feel like if you're not going to do genetic testing, and I would say maybe take them all out to day 5 and see what happens. Or take all to day 5 and then freeze them and then do another cycle. But I still feel like you have a good chance, Jamie. I wouldn't give up. And also ask your doctor if they would add HGH to your protocol. See if that's something that they can do there. I know that they probably can, and see if they feel comfortable doing that. Okay, this last question before I get to your live chatted questions comes from Drexel, age 35 in Minnesota. So Drexel, age 35 in Minnesota, is saying, would you treat TSH to lower in a patient who has a TSH of 3.27 but has negative antibodies? My first vet of 2 PGS tested embryos resulted in a miscarriage, and I'm wondering if I should advocate for Synthroid to lower my TSH and get it to an ideal range for trying to conceive. So the answer is, how important is having a normal TSH to getting pregnant and staying pregnant? And the answer is, it is pretty important. However, if the TSH is 3.27, I look at a complete thyroid panel. I also look at the free T4, total T3. I look at everything. And if those things are normal, I don't actually get too excited about a TSH of 3.27. I personally don't think, and it has nothing to do with my personal feelings, that a TSH of 3.27 is going to get in the way of a healthy implantation. However, we know that when you take all these hormones like estrogen, it can affect your TSH and make your TSH go up. So I would just repeat your TSH. If it's still persistently over 3, I would say just taking a whiff of Synthroid or levothyroxine, like 25 micrograms, and then checking your TSH 2 weeks later would be a good strategy for managing that. And then maybe have it managed by a thyroid doctor, because once you're pregnant and if your TSH continues to go up, you might want to have someone managing it a little bit more closely. And then to answer your question, and I know you didn't actually ask the question about what would you do if you have PGS tested embryos that you're miscarrying? I would consider doing implantation testing if you haven't already. Not necessarily for the ERA test, because it sounds like you know when your implantation window is, but I think maybe for the Receptiva DX test to see if there's inflammation that needs to be treated. Sometimes a miscarriage could be because there is mosaicism in the embryo that you called it normal, but actually isn't normal. It could be because there could be a polyp, a fibroid, or scar tissue in the uterus. If you haven't looked at that, I would say do a cavity evaluation like a hysteroscopy before your next transfer, and I wish you all the best. Okay, guys, I am going to just see if I can scan through your questions that you guys live chatted here. Thank you for joining me on Ask the Egg Whisperer. I really appreciate it. If you guys are going to pop off, no problem. I'm going to go through the questions that you guys have live chatted, and I have my next IVF class. Please join me. Next IVF class on Monday, March 22nd. So I hope you'll sign up, and it's a really great time. And I like talking about IVF, as you guys can tell, and sharing all my tips and tricks and suggestions as to how to feel like you are able to not just know what the right protocol is for you, but how to choose the right protocol if you're given a choice. We talk about what supplements to take, how to prepare, how to plan your transfer, what to do if a transfer doesn't work, and what to do once you're pregnant after IVF. So I go through all of that stuff. Okay, here we go. Marianne is asking, how often do you hear of your patients that have male factor low motility and count and can get pregnant naturally? And the answer, it can happen. I've seen it before. I mean, you can have a swimmer in there that knows exactly what to do. So it's possible. It's not impossible. Next question. Hi, what's your opinion on endometriosis for PIO? Versus PIO for a frozen embryo transfer. So my recommendation is to monitor your progesterone really closely, no matter what you're doing, whether it's PIO or endometriosis. I like endometriosis because people who don't like shots, it's nice to have another option for them. What I tell my patients is endometriosis is 8 to an 8 and never be late, or else I'm going to be really, really mad at you. But I use it a lot in my patients. They tolerate it really well. Marianne is saying taking 2 milligrams of esterase tablets 3 times a day with vaginal progesterone 3 per day plus baby aspirin prenatal. How many hours should I take each of those? Can I take them at the same time? And the answer is yes. You can totally take them at the same time. There's no reason to space them out. If you were my patient, that's what I would say. If an embryo doesn't make it to blast, can you tell if it was an egg issue or sperm issue? And the answer is no. However, women get blamed for a lot of things a lot of the time. A lot of times everyone says it's egg, 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 and then you find out that in the end it's not egg if, let's say, you use a donor egg, and then you find out you have the same quality embryos and you're like, now we know it's sperm. So there are some advanced tests that you can do on sperm, like the sperm aneuploidy test by iGenomics, SAT. You can also do a sperm DNA fragmentation test, but sometimes even those tests aren't perfect. They can't tell you everything about sperm. I had 1 cycle of IVF, temperature, eggs retrieved, but on the first 24 hours, only 3 fertilized. Is that due to my egg quality or is it because the lab wasn't good? I'm 40 low AMH of 0.67. So the answer is typically if you have that low of a fertilization rate and you're 40 years old, I would say that's pretty darn normal, unfortunately. Even though the fertilization rate is usually around 80%, if it's that low, it could still be sperm driven, but a lot of times it's probably egg because the egg is abnormal because of your age. Next question, I only have 1 ovary and tube. This ovary has a large cyst next to it and 2 endometriomas. It sounds like the only positive thing is my AMH is 2. Only 1% of my husband's sperm is normal. My fertility doctor said, let's jump in without a real discussion or probability of risk. Am I just a dollar sign? And the answer is your doctor is just trying to be as aggressive as possible because they feel like there's an urgency. Endometriosis is a fertility threatening condition. However, if you feel like you're being pushed into something that you're not ready for, what I should tell you is there's no emergency. You can do IVF in the next few months and still be just fine, given what you're sharing about your age. I think you shared what your age was a little bit earlier. Okay, let's see here. Let's see here. Someone's asking, where can I get your surgical hat for my IVF doctor? I think there's somewhere, I think I have something that says, it was actually a present from one of you guys, one of my followers who's actually I won't actually out her because I won't. Maybe she can out herself. I don't want to out her. Let's see here. Would you change anything in your angel method after a second miscarriage? Both 7.5 weeks with a heartbeat. So what I would say, if I have heard that someone has had a second miscarriage, both 7.5 weeks with a heartbeat, I would go through the entire angel method, and I would say, if you have the opportunity to do so, get the pregnancy tissue tested. That's the best thing that you can do to guide you as to what's going on. If that pregnancy has abnormal chromosomes, then you know what was going on. If the pregnancy had normal chromosomes, then you have to really dive deep into that angel method and see what you can find out. Let's see here. Hi, Dr. Aimee. Is a subchorionic hematoma really concerning for IVF babies? Mine is 1.7. I think you probably meant centimeters. How would you treat this? I'm on autoimmune protocol, baby aspirin and Lovenox, stopping baby aspirin and increasing progesterone, 1 in the AM and 1 in the PM. Thank you. So what I would say is they're super, super common. I'm not too worried about it. I'm not tripping over a 1 centimeter hematoma. I would say just take it easy, stop your aspirin and your Lovenox, and I would say go back in. If you see any increase in spotting or bleeding, get seen again, and I would restart your aspirin and Lovenox, or not necessarily your Lovenox unless there's a clear indication you need it, but restart your aspirin if it looks like it's getting smaller, or at least closer to 12 weeks if your age is over 40, if your BMI is over 30. Let's see here. What is adenomyosis? Can I still have a baby? And the answer is yes, you can still have a baby with adenomyosis. It's basically a finding in the uterus that can make the uterus look larger on ultrasound, but not always. It can cause heavier periods. It can cause clots to form. It can make your periods more painful, and it can be associated with endometriosis, but not all patients with adeno also have endo. I'm 44. Do you recommend going to retrieval with 2 or 3 follicles? And the answer is yes. If you're highly motivated to get IVF done with your own eggs, my magic number is 3. I feel like 3 is a really good number of eggs to go for. My wife just had her 7th failed medicated IUI. She had all her tushy testing and everything is normal. HSG showed tubes are open. Why isn't this working with frozen donor sperm, FYI? So here are the suggestions that I would have for her. Consider a double IUI. Consider being more aggressive with stimulation, perhaps trying to get her to ovulate 3 or even 4 eggs if you don't feel like IVF is the right thing to do. It could be related to an egg quality issue, so make sure she's doing things to support her egg quality, like take CoQ10, NAD, fish oil if she isn't already. Maybe consider seeing an acupuncturist. Next question. I had 2 14-millimeter follicles on day 3 along with several antral follicles. Is it not possible to get an accurate AFC? Would that affect my AMH? 2 14-millimeter follicles. No, I don't think so. I don't think that has anything to do with getting an AMH. Everything should be just fine with getting an accurate AFC and an AMH. Should my partner remove fibroids before my next IVF? 35 years old, AMH is 0.8, FSH is 13, estradiol 47, 4 eggs, 3 fertilized, 1 blast, awaiting PCOS. She won't be carrying. I will. Took CoQ10, melatonin, and Acai. So I would say it doesn't sound like they've interfered with anything. If your doctor can get all the eggs that they can see, if it wasn't hard to get to your ovaries, to get to her ovaries, I don't think she necessarily needs to remove any fibroids unless they're causing her pain, discomfort, frequent urination, back pain, constipation, heavy vaginal bleeding, which could cause anemia. Then I would say it's okay to leave them alone. I would just monitor them once a year. Is it normal for AMH to fluctuate over a year? Up, down, up, down. The answer is yes. That's what we call it. Not just anti-Mullerian hormone, but we call it always meandering hormone or always mean hormone. That's my friend Dr. Catherine de Ugarte has taught me that it's called. What is the HGH protocol? Please, Dr. Aimee. So HGH protocol, there are different ways of doing it. So one way is you start it twice a week leading up to your IVF cycle start, whether it's 2, 4, 6 weeks, or even 2 months. And then once you're in your cycle, taking it maybe every day, maybe every other day, and there are different dosages for it as far as how much you take every day, and that's something that your doctor can determine for you. During our first IVF cycle, only 2 of my 7 eggs fertilized. Both made it to blastocyst, but one was a 6cc and didn't meet freeze criteria, and the other was a 5EB and is frozen. Why can't a 6cc be frozen? CC in almost all labs mean the cells are just not viable. In fact, they're so not viable, they're almost not present. So there's a very scant amount of cells. And if you don't have an inner cell mass, which is the part of the embryo that becomes, or part of the blastocyst that becomes the embryo, then you can say that there is a 0% chance of pregnancy. So a 6cc indeed has a 0% chance of turning into any type of live birth. And so that's why we don't freeze it. Next question. I'm 36, day 3 labs changed from last time I ran them 9 months ago. My FSH went from 7, now 14, AMH is 0.8, estradiol is 56. What are your thoughts here? I see a RE next week, but that FSH scares me. So I would say don't be scared. I've had so many patients who have an FSH level of 14, 18, 22, and I've been able to get them healthy embryos. So this is the perfect time for you to do IVF. IVF was, one of the reasons to do IVF is a case like yours, where you just need to grow, let's say, 8 to 10 eggs to get the good one out. Because when you ovulate naturally, your body just doesn't automatically pick the good egg. And so I think you can use IVF in a case like yours to also preserve your fertility and give yourself a really good chance of having babies later. Is there a benefit from doing HSG versus SHG? And I would say yes. The benefit of doing the HSG is really looking at the tubes. However, SHG gives you a better idea about the cavity. Sometimes on HSG, you can miss things in the cavity that you might see on SHG, depending on how the uterus is visualized during the HSG. Let's see here. Someone's asking, how do you send in questions? So one of the ways you send in questions is go to asktheeggwhisperer.com. Hi, Dr. Aimee. Are there any long-term effects of IVF meds used during cycles? Gonal-F, Menopur, trigger shots, hormones. So I would say yes, they can cause depression, anxiety, PTSD when cycles don't work. I don't think it's necessarily from the hormones, but the hormones make you feel like crap, right? I mean, they make you feel like you're in estrogen fog. They make you tired all the time. And then when you go through a cycle and it doesn't work, it's like the worst. It makes you feel horrible. And that's my concern, is how horrible these cycles that don't work make us feel. So we got to find ways to bring the joy back during the cycles. I actually have a sign inside my office at the front that says, find joy in the journey. And so far, no one has broken that and said how annoying that is. I think people see that, and it's a reminder that they can't forget who they are, who they were before IVF and going through infertility treatment, and just keep their eye on what they're trying to do and make sure they're always moving, or always, what I say is take care of today, and then tomorrow will take care of itself. So it's so easy when you're going through fertility treatment to be like, okay, so when is my transfer going to be? Even before we've even made our embryos. Hi, Aimee. Have you seen success with intralipid therapy for patients with elevated natural killer cells? And I would say yes. I mean, the whole concept that natural killer cell elevation actually plays a role in infertility is really quite controversial for many reasons. And one of the reasons is that elevated blood levels don't really correlate to any levels inside your uterus, and that's where it really matters. There are people out there that have access to a type of biopsy that looks at natural killer cells in the uterus, but I feel like when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's usually the most obvious stuff that's the most obviously wrong, causing the issues, and not necessarily things like intralipid therapy for patients with elevated natural killer cells that are really going to help quite at all. I joke and I say, if you want to go get that intralipid infusion, you might as well just go, get a Jamba Juice, high protein shake, and start drinking that. But the reality is when someone has checked you for something and they tell you that you have an elevated natural killer cell level, it's hard not to treat it, right? I mean, it's so hard to ignore that because someone just told you something that makes you think that somehow there's something in your body that's toxic and it's going to attack your embryos. So, I mean, doing the intralipid infusion is fairly simple. There's an infusion center here down the street. So literally, like, I can point to it. It's right there. So when my patients say I'd like to check those levels, I actually don't ask patients to have that check done. So if a patient wants to have it done, I will do it for them, but I don't bring it up as part of a diagnostic test. It's not TWISHY, TUISHY. So it's not part of, intralipids aren't part of any type of method that I have or do. So anyways, can you take NAD if you have tachycardia history? And the answer is, I would say, be very, very careful because NAD can cause tachycardia. That's why I tell patients to take it first thing in the morning because it make you feel like your heart is jumping out of your chest. When I first started taking it, I was waking up at like 4 a.m. with panic attacks. And I was like, what is going on? And I realized that the only thing that I'm doing differently is taking NAD. So I started at a lower dose and then I started taking it every 3 days, and then every 2 days. And I finally got to every day. And then I increased my dose from 150 to 300. And that's why I have this very youthful look at my tender age of 75. What would you recommend for a woman with a balanced translocation? I have BT and take 400 milligrams of ubiquinol. Would you recommend anything else? I mean, the thing is, you can't treat a BT. I wish you could. I mean, you can potentially help your egg quality by eating healthy and taking supplements, but it's just a matter of, chance as to which embryo will have normal chromosomes or not. Hi, Dr. Aimee. I had a submucosal fibroid partially removed via hysteroscopic myomectomy. My doctor says probably back in the cavity because the larger part on the outside wasn't removed. Suggestion. I would consider doing another hysteroscopy. Sometimes it takes more than one hysteroscopy to get a fibroid removed. Sometimes it takes several. So I would say that if your doctor feels like it's not all out, I would listen to what they're saying and get it removed. Okay, guys, I'm almost done with all your questions. There's just 2 left, and then I'm going to call it a night. Hi, Dr. Aimee. Is it dangerous to postpone a hydrosalpine surgery for being able to get pregnant later? I was diagnosed in January, but my surgery is not until May because of COVID backlog. And the answer is no. It's not dangerous at all. I would, however, make sure that you've frozen your embryos first. So it's hard to wake up to having a fallopian tube removed if you don't have something to look forward to. If you don't have embryos waiting for you after that surgery, it can be quite depressing. So even though you know that having the hydrosalpines removed is going to improve your fertility, I still think that having embryos waiting is the best way to spend your time now until the backlog is lifted. Okay, last question is, what do you think of a DFI of 27% for IVF? So I would say 27% for me is yellow light. Yellow light means let's see what we can do to get it better before green light, which means proceed with IVF. Do I think it needs to slow down your progress and you have to wait? No, I would say make sure you've gone through the balls method, rule out a varicocele, look at sperm supplements, make sure he's taking all the supplements to make his sperm sparkle even more, make sure he's not drinking hard alcohol, smoking weed, smoking cigarettes, vaping, chewing nicotine, eating gummy bears that make him feel like he's high as a kite, none of that. And then after, he could basically just convert to Mormonism. I love Mormons, don't get me wrong. From now until it's time for your egg retrieval, and maybe even after that, because it might be good for his health, please. Okay, someone just shared something very sweet. I'll just say it out loud. My husband's saying, bring me home my vitamins, please. See, I give him True Niagen because I want him to live a really long time. So I'm going to bring home a bottle. He keeps reminding me. And then someone else said, Dr. Aimee, you're the best. May Allah bless you with the best of everything. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for joining me tonight on Ask the Egg Whisperer. I love you all. I hope you find these videos to be helpful. I know I talk fast sometimes, but I have, just like there's a backlog in IVF cases in some clinics, I have an Ask the Egg Whisperer backlog, and I really want to make sure that I get to everyone's question as soon as they send it in. So that's why I do this. Thank you, guys. I think you're the best. Thank you, Natalie, for sharing that. That's very sweet. And I will go home and enjoy my pot stickers. I love me my pot stickers. He better have my pot stickers ready. Okay. Bye, guys. Love you all. See you later.